Welcome to Mountain Connect. My name is Lori Sherwood, and I'm the Director, Commercial and Market Development for Render Networks. I will be the moderator today for this session entitled Digital Government Strategy in the Age of COVID. For this 30-minute panel, we will be having a conversation today with Mike Lynch with the City of Boston and Ernie Staten, the Director of Public Service for Fairlawn, Ohio. Welcome, gentlemen. I thought we could start by giving a brief introduction. Mike, if you could start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with the city.
Sure, thanks, Laurie. In the interest of full disclosure, I will say that Laurie and I were both longtime board members at the National Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors. Laurie just stepped off the board. I'll be doing the same thing next year, but it was always a pleasure working with her, and I'm glad she invited me to be here today. I've been the cable guy in Boston since about 1996. It coincided with the Telecom Act, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster ever since the beginning. Life seems to change every year. The changes we've been seeing lately have probably been a little bit more challenging, a little more aggressive deregulation, if you will, on the part of the FCC, and certainly the last year in COVID. I've probably been in city government since, I think, 1985. I absolutely love it. Continue to live in the city, and I have 2 adult kids. That's about it for me, Laurie.
Great. Thanks, Ernie. Over to you. Thanks, Mike. Ernie, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Lori. I'm the Director of Public Service for the City of Fairlawn. City of Fairlawn is a small suburb of Akron. We're 7,500 residents, and really the place shuts down about 10 o'clock at night, opens back up obviously at 7 in the morning. We have 40,000 visitors every day. Now with COVID, obviously that has dropped, but we have a good mix of residential, higher end residential with business and quite a bit of retail in our area. So the biggest reason I think I'm on this is because of our new utility, and it's Fairlawn Gig. So about 4 years ago, we launched the idea of a fiber to the home project, and we succeeded in about 18 months. We have now taken on 60% of the population here in Fairlawn that is on our network, and that includes business. So we pass every address, and 60% of them have taken our service. So obviously we'll have a long discussion how COVID affects that. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Ernie. And the session today is simple. We're just going to be having a conversation. We'll start with a Q&A with Mike, and then a Q&A with Ernie, and then we'll follow it up with a few more group discussion. So Mike, let's start with the 800-pound gorilla in the room and talk about COVID and how this has impacted the city of Boston.
Sure, Laurie, that sounds good. Actually, I thought you were going to, the 800-pound gorilla, I thought you were talking the Bronco-Pats game, but if you don't want to talk about that, that's absolutely fine with me. COVID was interesting in Boston. Like you guys, it was mid-March. It hit us fast. We did a lot of scrambling to get ready for remote work. We focused initially on employees. The city's got about 20,000 employees, maybe 4,000 of them were looking at working remotely. We never did much. We never encouraged remote work, if you will. So there was quite a scramble to get people up to speed, license enough and launch enough RDP to get everybody working, find the Chromebooks at the time, all that stuff. And as soon as we were able to get the workers settled a bit, we then had to turn to the schools and figure out how to do remote learning with them. The initial buy for Chromebooks was like 28,000. Back on Labor Day, we doubled down for the new school year and bought 40,000 more in order to give every kid a new Chromebook. Even, it's funny, you look back at what happened in March when we bought those Chromebooks. They really didn't have enough processing power for video, so they were not quite sufficient. So that's why we actually decided to give every kid a new Chromebook by this September. March, I think, we're in a different situation in Boston. We have Comcast. Verizon came to town about 4 years ago, and after decades of fighting, agreed to do Fios. And they doubled down and gave us a lot of dark fiber and other assets that we wanted, but they did a lot of upfront stuff. And we also have 2 other competitors. RCN is out there as well as a couple of wireless. Coverage is pretty good, but our socioeconomic challenge exists. We think, particularly in the school district, that about 5% of our 55,000 students lack a stable home environment with good connectivity. And we addressed that initially with hotspots and Chromebooks. We kind of doubled down on that again at Labor Day. It's getting a little bit expensive, but we locked those units down. They're only used for schoolwork. So that helps us a bit. But now we're looking towards other solutions, and I suspect you've seen the same in the Colorado area or in the Ohio area as well, Ernie, where we're looking at like long-term connectivity through, say, Internet Essentials of Comcast and other things. I'll pause there for now.
Yeah, so that's a good introduction and segue into, just a broader digital government strategy. And, I know the city has been very active. Boston's been very active with digital government components and planning and strategizing. How has this impacted that? And what is your digital government strategy?
Well, it's different today than it was 9 months ago. Let's put it that way. Right? So a lot of it is evolving. I think the guy who got our chief of security job last year is probably wishing he didn't get it, because there's a lot more of a scramble to keep things safe now than there had been a year ago. We have a pretty good online platform. I think we need to update a lot of our transactional stuff for our citizens, whether it be we're not talking voting yet, right? But we are talking taxes, and we'd like to make sure we get that revenue, and we need a more solid upgrade on that. The security aspects have been a freak show. Ernie, I'm sure you actually have a frontline seat to this as well. Some of the things that we see, we look very closely at what happens in other cities and try to identify what the risk was, what happened, where are our vulnerabilities. It gets very challenging. I think the focus on public or local government at this point is that we're somewhat low-hanging fruit. We didn't necessarily invest in security early on, and now we have a problem. I think Ernie's situation is a little different from ours, because actually that's a commercial enterprise, so he's probably more on the cutting edge of security.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so as far as citizen engagement goes, I mean, obviously there's a lot of sunshine laws and open meetings, and, how has the city been managing those aspects of government?
Well, if I can brag a little bit, I've got about a dozen folks working for me who work in government access television, and they've been doing a fabulous job. We split them into kind of two teams, have an A team and a B team, and they have been doing boards and commissions type work along with daily news updates for 6 months now. They do a great job at it. It is very, very challenging. I think everyone has solved the problem of getting Zoom bombs that happened months and months ago, but still getting connections. The three of us here today, we all came to this well prepared. We have decent bandwidth. Our notes are ready and stuff like that. We still have, you still have commissioners, perhaps residents who are speaking in crowded, noisy rooms, who aren't presenting themselves adequately. So we have all sorts of the challenges. Years ago, a friend of mine said, "Good government is messy." We're seeing that right now, but it's actually working. That's the amazing thing. So no one is actually in City Hall, but government is working. So it's pretty cool.
Now, you mentioned your government channels, and I know public education and government channels, the city has a few of those. And how are your community media operations going?
Actually, we're doing very well with those. So as I said, our office is strictly, say, the government side and the education side, lots of boards and commission type hearings, meetings and stuff like that. That works out well. Community access was a little challenging. You can't have people come in and work on editing and give them equipment and stuff. But there's enough ability at home to produce content and deliver it to the station. So they've been doing that. The community side has also reached out to the schools and said, "Hey, let's have like VIP storytelling every night, and bring someone in to tell a story every night." There's a core group of about 20 teachers. I think we have a system with, I don't know, 1,000 teachers, but there's about 20 who love to do homework help at night. So we do maybe 4 or 5 hours a night of homework help for specific curricula. And this is also being shown on PEG Access. And since you mentioned it, Laurie, there's two things I want to mention. One is, apparently yesterday was Community Media Day, but we can celebrate it all week if you'd like. So hopefully that'll be good. But there was a study earlier in the year by a couple of academics at American University, and they surveyed pretty much, I think, 1,500 access organizations across the country. And all of them have sort of entered a new phase, a sort of rejuvenated life and value, because many local governments didn't have the tools or the in-house experience to deal with televised presentation or AV presentation of boards and commissions, and this group did.
Hmm.
And it kind of rejuvenated that relationship between local government and the access centers. It's been good to see.
Interesting. You know, I'll take credit as my American University is my alma mater. So
There you go.
kudos for mentioning that. And then, you know, you mentioned initially just you have your cable providers in town. Has the city really shifted in thinking? Are you considering any sort of municipal network or filling in the gaps? I know you mentioned working with Internet Essentials, but what is your plan? What is the city's plan going forward?
All right, so you brought up the item that has come up more than once in the last month. We had a city council hearing a couple of weeks ago, and 13 city councilors, I would say 8 asked them about municipal broadband and developing that. I think that's in the rearview mirror for us. And let me give you a couple of reasons why. It took us almost 10 years to get the commitment from Comcast. I think it was then AT&T Broadband in Boston to deliver a municipal fiber dark fiber network to us. And we've been running on that for the last 12 years, 130 buildings, pretty much all city applications, cameras in the right of way, all that stuff. It's strictly for municipals. Verizon came in, we're building that out, and we're essentially doubling down on that original network. So if we had 130 in the first network, Verizon is also going to give us 130 buildings. It's not an exact doubling. We do interconnection just in case there's some failure later on. And then more recently, we did an RFP, I would say about 3-4 years ago, for dark fiber, more like segments. We weren't really looking for a network at this point, but we're looking to make sure we connected all our elementary schools and our smaller city facilities. And we captured about 170 buildings in that. Ultimately, the company that won, bought, sold, acquired, is now Crown Fiber. And we're probably 75% done with implementing that. When we're done, I think we're going to have about 400 sites connected. It's a muni-fiber network. It is for municipal use only. If we had to do it all over again, I probably think we should have probably gone with a muni-fiber network 20 years ago. But the one thing that we couldn't answer then and we can't answer today is, in a city as crowded and dense as Boston, I think it was both technically and financially infeasible.
Yeah, no, having
I'm taking the coward's way out. Every city councilor needs, and I'm also practicing my line. So if I said anything wrong, let me know.
Growing up in and around Boston, I can.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Ernie's network used boring construction for underground, which absolutely freaked out our public works guys the first time someone even mentioned them. But we're in a completely different situation in Boston.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
So Ernie, we'll start with you with the same question, just about how COVID has impacted Fairlawn and the city and in your operations.
Well, I can tell you it's really refreshing to hear Mike say that they were scrambling. Obviously, a small city like us is always thinking that someone larger, either the state or a larger city like Boston, they must have it all under control, and we're scrambling, and we don't know what we're doing, and we should be calling for help, but at the same time, we're scrambling so much that calling for help doesn't make a lot of sense. So same thing here. We scrambled in a big way. We did not have much of our city online. We have a trash compactor here that all of our residents use. It's 89% of the city uses the trash compactor. It's free for them to bring the trash to us. It's the most unheard of thing that people have heard of, that people bring their trash to us. We see, Corvettes, Mercedes coming through with trash in their trunk. But we have this compactor system that was, people had to come in and get a sticker for every year in June from us to use the compactor. It's free. We're just trying to keep some control of it with this sticker that we put on their car. Well, obviously we couldn't have them in our building. So here we are, we're so used to doing it that way that so we've scrambled and we now have it online, but as Mike said, I think every aspect of city government scrambled throughout this. My mayor is a great guy, but he's very conservative. He wants to have meetings in person. He wants to see the people vote, for whatever it is in person. He wants to see people in the audience. So he struggled with the idea of that there would have to be online meetings. Now, our governor did a great job right in the beginning, said we need to throw the rules out right now and immediately allow for Zoom meetings or whatever for your council meetings, which was really important, but it did stop progress to a point. I mean, no doubt COVID did that, but we also stopped at our planning commission because we were scrambling. You didn't see a lot of new plans coming into us. So Mike, I'm sorry that I'm saying this, but I'm glad to hear that you were scrambling like we were. It's just good to hear.
And I don't think you guys are alone either.
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to, it's funny the way Ernie spoke of that. I have a colleague and, he's fabulous at doing work in spreadsheets. And the city of Boston, we happen to be in kind of a Google network now. So he became something of a resident expert in Google Sheets and Google Forms. He has done hundreds over the last 6 months because everybody had, as you said, Ernie, some sort of process that either required people to come into City Hall, whether it be something else, and we couldn't have that. So at this, we're of a certain age, shall we say, right? So I couldn't believe it. I was, hey, at this age, Brian, did you ever expect to be a developer again? But that's exactly what he's doing.
Right.
We've all shifted, and
Yeah.
And Ernie, so let's go into Fairlawn Gig. I know, kudos to you guys for doing something that very few communities have done around the country, which is you've built a greenfield network without the benefit of leveraging a municipal electric system. And you have an extremely successful network, and now you're looking at expanding. If you can just spend a few minutes talking about Fairlawn Gig and just, updates of where you are and what your plans are.
I can add to the greenfield without electric to start with. We didn't even have a back office, so we're fortunate that the city of Akron handles our water. We actually use the county for our sewers, even though we own them. And then obviously we don't have electric, or at that time we didn't have any type of broadband. So we didn't even have a billing system to start working off of. So that was all brand new. And originally we thought we would use an ISP to come in here and help us out, but that didn't work out. And at the end of the day, we took it on. I'm sure Mike would say the same thing, but the only people in the city that really know the city are the government workers. So it was so much easier for us to take it in-house as an ISP and start doing the actual customer service. The issue with it was we didn't have back office. So that was a big piece that we had to put in place. But yes, we're very fortunate. We started this. We took a big leap. We took $10 million out to build infrastructure that would pass every house. And at the moment, 60% of the addresses in Fairlawn take Fairlawn Gig. And now we're to a point where the county and actually the state are now walking into us on a regular basis. I'm having numerous meetings with both that they want to expand our network. So the latest expansion is we are doing a fiber ring around the city of Akron through the CARES Act. And this fiber ring, the intent behind it is the criminal justice system needs a way to handle prisoners and the court system. So they want a video and they want it to be private and they needed it to be, a secure network. So the idea is we're running this ring around there. We're going to connect 28 buildings, and those 28 buildings will have their own network. Multiple other applications will come off of this, but the initial application is the idea of video arraignment. It's actually going to save the jail and court system $600,000 a year to go to this video system. So we received CARES Act funding to put this system in. We did decide to build it big enough that we'll be able to service commercially off of it in the future. But at the moment, we're really just focused on making sure that we do something special for the courts and jails.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
With COVID, have you seen an uptick over the last 6 months in people calling and asking for service, and how have you been managing those operations?
Yeah, it was a real fear of ours starting out with COVID, knowing that we were going to have all this remote access. So it's not only, what we were scrambling with internally in the government, but you could see all the businesses were scrambling with it. And we didn't know what that was going to mean for us. Were the businesses going to start calling and saying, hey, I don't need internet at my main location. I need to do something with my remote people.
Workers.
And in Fairlawn, as I said before, we have 30,000 to 40,000 people that visit Fairlawn. Most of them don't live in Fairlawn. So what was that going to do to our business? Was the businesses going to drop off? What we found was there was a huge uptick, obviously, in home connections, where we had multiple service levels, and they all jumped to a higher service level very quickly. So that was a bonus for us, obviously. And the businesses kept the connection because they needed it to produce this remote connection for them. And at the same time, the very small businesses that were having a hard time, like travel agencies or something like that, we actually did a seasonal hold for them. So the idea was we would keep it warm, but we would just charge you $10 a month to keep it warm. We knew that you weren't going to use it, but this way, there's not a reconnection fee at the end of the day. So I think really COVID in a lot of ways helped us and helped us really amp up our system. So we had 10 gig, multiple 10 gigs coming into as our upstream. We have now signed on. In November, we will be 100 gig network.
Wow.
So it's shown the growth that has come out of this.
That's really exciting. I mean,
That's great.
and I think your customer satisfaction numbers show that. I mean, I've seen some data that you have been publishing and putting out there around customer satisfaction, and then also your marketing campaign around taking lemons and turning them into lemonade. If you want to talk about those two things.
Yeah, so we have a great marketing department. We actually we outsource it, but it has been great, a real great working relationship between us and our department. But what came out of the surveys was we were in the 80% satisfaction ratings, all the way up to 89 in certain aspects of it. And all of the satisfaction was well above just being satisfied. We weren't really looking to see where do we stand. We felt like we were satisfying people, but we wanted to see how good our customer service was. That's something that we really wanted to bring to the table. So, the general idea behind telecom is I'm going to come to your house, I'm going to make a service call, and I'll be there between 8 and 5. We do not believe in that idea. Our idea is if we tell you 8, we better be there at 5 minutes till 8. And if we tell you that we're going to be there an hour, we're not there past an hour. We better be there within the time frame. And then we kept everything local. So that's another big issue with customer service, that, when you call in, you're talking to someone in Fairlawn or in the very local vicinity when it's off hours. So that was really important to us, and it showed in the customer satisfaction. And then we had a business customer satisfaction that we wanted to see, what does this network mean to you? Would you have moved here? Did you stay here because of it? And it was amazing to hear how many people said, we're staying in Fairlawn because of this. I brought up Planning Commission earlier. We've had numerous companies come into Planning Commission that have walked in and said, the only reason why we're coming is Fairlawn Gig. We could have gone anywhere. We have a hospital that could have had free land in Akron. They chose to spend $4 million to build in Fairlawn, and they stated that Fairlawn Gig was the only reason why they were going to make that investment. So it's really shown that this network has been great. And then on the back half of that, we did ask people what happened with COVID. What did it do at your home? And it was amazing to hear the stories that came out of the people that really explained how important it was to be able to just say, hey, I can go home and work, and I can do 3-4 Zoom meetings a day, and I never have to worry about the network. So those, those stories were great. I think we ended up with like about 20 pages of stories from people that just explained how wonderful this network was. So that just reinforced the idea of the customer satisfaction.
Sure. No, that's outstanding.
That's
I worked with the community earlier this year, who in March, April timeframe, when everything was shutting down, mentioned to me that somewhere around 25 or 30% of their kids had no connectivity. And,
Wow, that's a big number.
and then there was a number out of Maryland, maybe it was in the Baltimore region, Baltimore County, but it said 10% of their students just disappeared.
So I was telling the story earlier, and I'll revisit it quickly. Our school system is actually split in half. It's Copley Fairlawn School. We're a small community. Copley is a township next to us. They just took a vote to bring all the kids back to school. And the reason for the vote was it was overwhelming in Copley that the connectivity was not there for them to do learning at home. Fairlawn, so we actually saw the breakdown. Fairlawn residents were asking, no, just stay at home. Let's not bring the kids back to school. There was a larger amount because of the Copley area, but it is amazing to hear that how important this connection to the world is right at the moment.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting because obviously over the next 6 months, we don't know when this is going to end. Right now cases are on the rise again. So, Mike, what are you making plans for? I mean, as through the winter, I mean, you mentioned today that there's some changes.
Sure. And I'm going to reserve some time later because I got a couple of questions I want to ask Ernie about Fairlawn Gig. It really sounds like an interesting project, but what we know we are doing now is there are certain populations who are not connected and cannot get connected by their own means. And we're addressing that through sort of bulk purchase, if you will, of broadband connections like Comcast Internet Essentials. I think we've already committed to 3,500 subscriptions over the next year. If you told me a year ago that the city would be buying home broadband for people, I would have thought you were crazy. But this is the world we now live in. Of course, one of the things, I was on a budget call yesterday and I reminded people, I'm making a 1-year commitment here. A year from now, when these subscriptions are up, that becomes the floor. People are going to expect that will be going forward, and we have no revenue to pay for that next year. We're kind of using one-time dollars this year to make this happen. It won't be repeated next year, so it's going to be another challenge for us. I think the situation we have, anecdotally, Ernie said that he surveyed his residents. We actually surveyed, some agencies surveyed their clients, if you will, like the housing authority, but most we actually surveyed our providers. And we found things in Boston, and I assume this is something shared in other cities, is we have a lot of immigrants and they are not able to go to English language classes, ESOL classes. They're losing ground, really, because they're not being able to assimilate. So clearly we were giving them tablets just to make sure that they can be connected with this training and this program. The citizens in public housing who are isolated, and they're not going to let somebody knock on their door and come in. And providers are concerned for them. So we have to have some means to connect them as well. It has to be more than a phone call in some respects. You want to be able to have a little video, a little face-to-face. These are some of the situations that we've been dealing with. Even some of our school children may not be in, I guess the phrase would be stable housing. They may be living in hotels or moving from one neighborhood to another community. And so we need to that's why the hotspots are a better solution for them. A landline solution isn't going to work. These are challenges that we were out there, but we didn't realize how challenging and how difficult it was. And that's why we're kind of stuck in doing, I don't think it will ever go away that we have a little bit of fixed line and a little bit of wireless. There's just no way to get that remedied,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we certainly live in a digital world. And so, Mike, we have a few minutes left, so I'll let you give Ernie the last question.
Well, I was just, Ernie, if you could give me a little, I think I read a little bit about your project and understand that this wasn't an independent venture. This was, I think, municipal backed. So I assume you went to maybe bond financing. How are things looking from a financial perspective for you? It sounds like a really successful project. That's why I'm asking.
I told you about the compactor earlier. We do things a little unique here, and I think that we just realized that it's really important to come up with these unique situations. So what we really did was we went out to bonding, as you said. We have a great rating. We knew that that was going to go well. We went out for bond, but to repay that bond debt, which is roughly about $500,000 a year, we took that out of my infrastructure budget. So we looked at this as this is infrastructure. It's necessary infrastructure, just like a road or a water line or anything that would be necessary for the public. We took that, we decided to take that out of that budget. And then we made a conscious decision that this network does not need to repay that back to the city. The idea is just like our roads or water lines, we don't ask for assessment with any of that. So we take care of that by city dollars, really tax dollars. So we didn't raise taxes to do this. We took it out of infrastructure. Wow. That was a big step in what we were doing. Then we decided that there's no reason to charge anyone in the city to make the connection to their house. So we don't charge for a connection fee, and really we're just going by a service fee. And we try to keep that service fee as low as we could to keep with operating. So at the moment, I'm glad to say that we're bringing in $210,000 a month, and we roughly pay $160,000 in total operation. Now that gets us to the 100 gig, and there's many things in the operation, but we're 50,000 ahead. So if you really took that 50,000, we could pay for the bond debt if we wanted to out of that. But we've decided that we're just going to use that to keep moving forward with upgrading, getting better connection. We're actually looking at the latest Wi-Fi in home. So we'd like to change out the in-home pieces. And then, as you are, we're trying to come up with a Wi-Fi network of some sort that could give people a connection that either can't afford a connection, don't understand how important a connection is, school kids to work, to do school work. I'm guessing you had the same problem we did, but our library shut down along with this COVID. So the place that they could go get internet is no longer there for them. So the idea is to get that Wi-Fi infrastructure, and that's been a struggle because we don't own the utility poles, but we're coming up with ways to figure that out. Really,
that's terrific. So guys,
I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's such a successful story, and it's so important to share what you've learned. And so with that, I think we've got about 30 seconds each for a quick closing remarks. If there's something that you want to mention, just focusing on, digital government strategy, what your recommendations are for communities that are struggling on and how to move forward with COVID.
Well, I'll just jump in with one thing. Ernie had mentioned at one point that they tend to operate and buy and manage locally. And it struck me when you said that phrase, because I remember about 20 years ago, I think it was Amos Hostetter, who had owned Continental Cablevision, later became part of US West, and that was a little bit of his business mantra. He would say that to his techs at the time. Look, you're working in this town, you're part of this town. You work here, you live here, you buy your equipment at the local hardware store, you manage and do things locally. Really resonated with me when you said that, Ernie. Good luck with the project.
Thank you. Lori, I think the only thing that I'd like to add is with the whole security piece, one thing that we found is there needs to be a lot of connections to IXs. So the importance of IX connections are you're connecting actually to the content provider. You're not using the internet. So the further that we can get away from relying on internet all the time and go to these content providers, you can really start to get a security measure there that has never been heard of. So we're doing a lot of that here in Fairlawn. Our 100 gig connection will eventually go to Chicago, and at Chicago, we're going to pick up Facebook and Amazon and the likes. So now it will just be over our connection. It won't generally go to the internet. So I think that's what you'll see in the future. That I think that'll be really important.
That's exciting. That could be a whole nother session, Ernie.
Right.
So thank you guys for this great conversation. I learned a lot this morning. It was fun. And we hope everyone at Mountain Connect enjoys the virtual conference this year, and hopefully we'll look forward to seeing everyone in person next year.
Thank you.